I spent 32 days in a hospital bed fighting for my life, and no one in my family came through that door. Not my mother. Not my father. Not my sister. The chair beside my bed stayed empty while the heart monitor kept its steady rhythm. The fluorescent lights buzzed above me. At night, I watched them blur against the ceiling whenever the pain medication made my eyes heavy. For 32 days, I kept looking at that chair. I kept thinking someone would finally sit in it. They never did. My name is Olivia Hart. I was 29 when I learned that being related to someone and being cared for by them were not the same thing. It started on a Tuesday morning in my apartment in Columbus. I had been standing in my kitchen, waiting for my coffee to finish dripping. The window above my sink was fogged from the rain outside. My work bag sat by the front door. I was supposed to leave in 20 minutes. Then a sharp pain tore through my stomach. At first, I thought I had stood up too fast. I grabbed the counter and waited for the room to settle. It did not. The mug slipped from my hand and hit the tile floor. Coffee spread around my shoes. I remember trying to reach for my phone. Then everything went dark. The next thing I knew, someone was pressing a mask over my face. "Miss Hart, can you hear me?" a man asked. The ceiling above me was moving. Or maybe I was moving under it. I tried to answer, but my mouth felt dry. "You're in an ambulance," he said. "Try to stay awake for me." The siren screamed above us. My body felt cold even under the blanket. A paramedic held my wrist while another checked a monitor beside me. "What happened?" I asked. "You had a collapse," she said. "The emergency room is waiting for you." At Starlight Medical Center, everything became fast. Doctors asked questions. Nurses cut through the sleeve of my sweater. Someone pushed a clipboard toward me while another person explained that I had severe internal complications. The surgeon leaned over my bed. "We need to operate," he said. "Soon." "How soon?" I asked. "Within the hour." I stared at him. He had kind eyes. That made it worse. My phone was sitting on the blanket near my hand. My fingers were shaking, but I managed to unlock it. I called my mother first. Veda answered after 4 rings. "Livia," she said. "What is it?" "Mom, I'm at the hospital." There was a pause. "I collapsed," I said. "They're taking me into surgery." Another pause followed. I could hear something faint in the background. A television show, maybe. Someone laughing. "Oh no," she said. Her voice sounded concerned in the way people sound when they hear bad news about someone they do not know very well. "That's terrible." "I'm scared," I said. "Well, keep me updated," she replied. "I'm sure the doctors know what they're doing." Then she hung up. I looked at the phone for a few seconds. The screen went dark in my hand. I told myself she was probably in shock. Maybe she would call back. Maybe she was getting ready to come. I called my father next. Nolan answered on the 3rd ring. "Hey, Liv. Dad, I'm at Starlight. I collapsed this morning. They said I need emergency surgery." "What?" he asked. I heard a sports announcer in the background. There was crowd noise. Someone in the room said something I could not make out. "They're taking me in soon," I said. "I just wanted you to know." "Geez," he said. "Okay. Well, check in later when you can." My throat tightened. "I might not be able to," I told him. "They said it's serious." He went quiet for half a second. Then he said, "You'll be fine. Just focus on getting through it." After that, I heard him speak away from the phone. "Do we have anything to eat?" The call ended. I did not call Bria. My sister and I had not spoken in almost 3 weeks. She had borrowed $475 from me after saying she was short on rent. When I asked when she planned to pay it back, she told me I was being dramatic. Still, before they wheeled me toward surgery, I opened our message thread. I typed 3 words. "Going into surgery." Then I pressed send. The message showed delivered. A few minutes later, it changed to seen. There was no reply. The operating room was cold. I remember the bright lights. I remember someone telling me to count backward. Then nothing. When I woke up, my throat burned from the breathing tube. My stomach felt like it had been filled with fire and pulled tight with wire. I could not move without pain climbing through my ribs. A nurse adjusted the blanket over my legs. You're awake, she said softly. You made it through surgery. I tried to speak, but my voice came out rough. My family, I whispered. She looked toward the door. The chair beside my bed was empty. They may come later, she said carefully. I nodded because I needed to believe that. I was not asking them to fix it. I was asking them to show up. The next morning, pale sunlight came through the hospital window. The monitor kept beeping. The hallway filled with carts and quiet footsteps. And the chair beside my bed was still empty. The first few days after surgery did not move in normal time. Morning came, then disappeared. Nurses changed shifts. Meals arrived on plastic trays and went cold before I could eat more than a few bites. The hallway outside my room never seemed to rest. Wheels squeaked across the floor. Machines beeped from rooms I could not see. Someone always needed something. I mostly needed to breathe without feeling like my body was arguing with me. On my second night, a pain woke me just after midnight. It was sharp and deep. It pulled across my stomach until I could not sit still. I pressed the call button, trying not to panic as the room tilted around me. A nurse came in first, then another, then the resident. By dawn, I had a fever. The surgeon stood near the foot of my bed later that morning, holding a tablet against his chest. His expression was careful, which was never a good sign. We found a complication, he said. We need to take care of it before it becomes more serious. I looked at the empty chair by the window. Will I have to go back into surgery? I asked. It will be a shorter procedure, he said. But yes. I nodded because there was nothing else to do. I wanted to call my mother again. I even picked up my phone. Then I imagined Veda saying, "Keep me updated," with that same gentle voice that had felt so far away. I imagined her ending the call because something else needed her attention more. So I put the phone down. The procedure happened that afternoon. When I woke up, my mouth tasted like metal. My whole body felt heavy, as though someone had placed wet sandbags across my chest. A bag of clear fluid hung beside me, and the 4-pump made a low mechanical hum that never stopped. My phone lit up around noon on the third day. For a second, I thought maybe my mother had called the hospital. Maybe she had finally asked when visiting hours were. Instead, I saw a text. Veda, hope you're feeling better today. That was all. No question about the second procedure. No question about the fever. No question about whether I was alone. I stared at the message until the screen dimmed. Then I typed, "They had to take me back in yesterday." I waited. Her reply came 40 minutes later. Veda, oh wow. That sounds scary. Rest up, sweetheart. I read it twice. Then I set the phone on the tray table and watched the 4-pump countdown drops of medicine into my arm. By day 8, she sent another message. Veda, thinking of you. Hope you are getting stronger. There was a yellow heart at the end. That small symbol made something inside me go quiet. Nolan did not call. He sent one text on day 5. Nolan, your mom says you're stable. Good. I answered. I had another procedure. He did not respond. His second message came 3 days later. Nolan, do you still have my old mower in your storage unit? I thought I had read it wrong. I checked the message again, looking for a second line. Maybe he meant to ask how I was first. Maybe the rest of the message had not loaded. It had. My father had managed to type 6 words about a lawnmower while I was still too weak to walk to the bathroom alone. I never answered him. Bria did not say anything at all. Her silence stretched past the first week. Then the second. I knew she had seen my message from before surgery because the word "seen" still sat beneath it like a stamp. On day 18, my phone buzzed just before dinner. Bria, did you happen to see my earbuds case? I think I left it at your place last month. I held the phone in my hand for a long time. She had not asked whether I was alive. She had not asked whether the surgery had gone well. She wanted a small white plastic case for something she could replace online in 2 days. I put the phone face down. Across the hall, a little girl was visiting her grandfather. I could hear her before I saw her. She had a bright, high voice, and she was carrying a paper bag that crinkled every time she moved. When the door across from mine opened, I saw her run toward his bed with a drawing held against her chest. "I made you this," she said. The old man laughed. It sounded weak, but it was real. Later that evening, the woman 2 doors down got 3 visitors. One brought flowers. One carried a stack of magazines. The third sat in the chair beside her bed and simply held her hand while they watched something on a phone together. I tried not to look. I failed. Anika came in near the end of her shift. She was the nurse with dark hair pulled into a neat bun and a calm voice that made every instruction sound manageable. She checked my 4, then placed a small cup beside my water. "What is that?" I asked. "Vanilla pudding," she said. "You barely touched dinner." "I'm not hungry." "I know. But you need something in your system." She adjusted my blanket, then set a paper cup of tea beside the pudding. I looked at her. "You didn't have to do this." Anika paused. Her eyes moved toward the empty chair near the window. She did not say anything about it at first. Then she looked back at me. "Someone has to make sure you feel like you matter in this room." My throat tightened so fast that I could not answer. She gave my shoulder a gentle squeeze before she left. I waited until the door clicked shut. Then I cried quietly into my pillow. Not because the pain was worse that night. Not because I was afraid of another procedure. I cried because a nurse who had known me for less than a week understood something my own family had ignored. I used to think family was something you never had to ask for. But lying in that room, listening to the 4 pump hum through the dark, I started to understand that some people kept the title and left the work to strangers. And every morning, when I opened my eyes, I looked toward that chair. It was still empty. 32 days after I arrived at Starlight Medical Center, a doctor told me I could go home. He said it carefully, like the words needed to be handled with caution. "You are improving," he told me. "Your numbers are stable, and you are healing. You still need to take it slowly." I nodded while he explained the medication schedule, the warning signs, and the list of follow-up appointments waiting for me over the next several weeks. My discharge packet sat in my lap. It was thicker than I expected. 32 days of treatment. 3 surgeries. Pages of lab results. Notes from specialists. A calendar marked with appointments I would have to keep by myself. The folder felt heavy against my legs. Not because of the paper. Because it was proof that I had been somewhere terrible, and no one I loved had bothered to stand beside me while I was there. Anika came in near noon to remove the last monitor leads from my chest. The adhesive pulled at my skin when she lifted them away. "Do you have someone coming to get you?" she asked. I looked toward the window. Outside, the sky was gray over Columbus. Rain had been threatening all morning, but it had not started yet. "I called a car," I said. Her hands paused for a moment. "You should not be carrying too much," she said. "Let the driver bring your bag down." "It's only one bag." She looked at the small canvas bag on the chair beside me. It held the clothes I had arrived in, a toothbrush, and the sweater the emergency room staff had cut open at the sleeve. Then she looked at the discharge folder in my lap. "You still have your phone nearby?" she asked. "Yes. Call the nurse station when you get home. Just so we know you made it inside safely." I told her I would. She did not say anything about my family. She had seen the empty chair every day. She did not need an explanation. Before she left, she rested her hand lightly against my shoulder. "Recovery is still recovery," she said. "You do not have to prove you are strong by doing it all alone." I almost laughed at that. Not because it was funny. Because I had spent most of my life confusing being alone with being strong. The rideshare arrived 12 minutes later. The driver was a middle-aged man named Curtis. He wore a navy jacket and kept the heat low in the car. When he saw me move slowly toward the curb with the hospital staff, he got out before I reached the door. "I've got your bag," he said. "Thank you." He took it without making me repeat myself. That simple kindness stayed with me. I held the discharge folder against my chest during the ride. Every bump in the road pulled at the stitches beneath my skin. Downtown Columbus moved past the window in wet gray shapes. People crossed intersections with umbrellas over their heads. A woman walked a golden retriever near a coffee shop. A delivery driver carried 2 grocery bags into an apartment building. Ordinary life was happening everywhere. Mine had stopped for 32 days. I had texted Veda the exact date and time of my discharge 3 days earlier. Her reply had come almost 2 hours later. Veda, glad you're getting out. Make sure you rest. There was no question about whether I needed a ride. Nolan did not respond at all. Bria had not said anything since asking about her earbuds case. When Curtis pulled up outside my building, I sat still for a moment. The front entrance looked the same as it had the morning I collapsed. The brick steps, the dented mailbox panel, the small patch of ivy that grew along the sidewalk. But I did not feel like the same person walking back toward it. Curtis carried my bag inside and set it beside the elevator. You take care of yourself, he said. I will, I replied. The words sounded thin. My apartment door stuck when I unlocked it. The air inside was stale and warm. It had that closed-up smell of old dust, cold fabric, and something forgotten. I stepped in carefully. The first thing I saw was the plant by the window. It had been green when I left. Now the leaves were brown and curled inward. Several had fallen onto the floor, dry enough to break when I stepped too close. The kitchen counter was covered in unopened mail. Utility bills. Grocery flyers. A letter from my health insurance company. An envelope from my landlord that I did not have the strength to open yet. The refrigerator made a weak humming sound when I opened it. There was half a bottle of expired dressing, 2 cans of sparkling water, and a carton of eggs that had no business still being there. No one had checked my apartment. No one had watered the plant. No one had taken the trash out or put food in the fridge or even asked whether I would come home to anything. I stood in the kitchen with one hand pressed against the counter. For a long time, I did not move. The apartment was not just messy. It confirmed what I had been trying not to admit. No one had come near my life while I was gone. I carried the discharge folder to the living room, but I did not make it to the couch. My legs gave out before I reached it. I lowered myself onto the floor slowly, leaning my back against the side of the sofa. The carpet felt rough beneath my palms. My bag sat near the door. The medical folder rested across my lap. A dead leaf had stuck to the bottom of my sock. I looked around the room. There was no welcome home card. No container of soup in the refrigerator. No note from my mother saying she had stopped by. Nothing. I took out my phone. The message threads were still there. Veda's yellow heart. Nolan's question about the lawnmower. Bria's message about the earbuds case. I read them all again. Then I put the phone down without replying to anyone. That night, I sat on the floor until the light outside the window disappeared. At some point, I made myself a promise. Actually, I made 3. I would never confuse obligation with love again. I would never use my money to buy attention from people who had already decided I was optional. And I would never write a long explanation for the word no. The next time they asked me for something, I would answer with the effort they had given me. A month later, my phone lit up with a message from my mother. And suddenly, that promise had a price. Exactly 32 days after I came home from the hospital, my phone lit up with my mother's name. I was sitting at my kitchen table with a cup of tea that had gone cold beside me. My follow-up appointment had been that morning. The doctor said my recovery was moving in the right direction, although I still needed to avoid lifting anything heavy and take my medication exactly on schedule. I had spent the afternoon sorting through hospital bills. The numbers made my stomach tighten, even after insurance. Then Veda's message appeared. For 1 second, I thought she might finally ask how the appointment went. Maybe she had remembered I existed outside of a family group photo or a holiday table. I opened the message. Veda, hi, sweetheart. Exciting news. Bria and Kieran are getting married in October. I stared at the screen. There was another message below it. Veda, they found the perfect dress at a boutique in Dublin. It is exactly what Bria dreamed of, but it costs $12,800, and we are a little short. The last message came a few seconds later. Veda, we need $12,800 for Bria's wedding dress. Family helps family. There was no question about my recovery. No mention of the 3 surgeries. No apology for the 32 days that had passed without a single visit. Not even a sentence pretending she regretted leaving me alone. Just a wedding dress. I read the messages once. Then I read them again. The room stayed quiet around me. My refrigerator hummed. A car passed outside on the street below. Somewhere upstairs, someone dropped something heavy, and the sound traveled through the ceiling. I could not stop looking at the number. $12,800. My mother had not asked whether I could afford it. She had not asked whether I needed help paying the bills stacked across my kitchen table. She had written it as though the money was already hers, and I was simply the final step in getting it to Bria. Family helps family. That sentence had been used against me for most of my life. When Bria wanted new clothes before school started, family helps family. When she needed tutoring after failing 2 classes, family helps family. When she wanted a newer car than the one our parents had planned to give her, family helps family. The phrase always seemed to mean the same thing. Livia gives. Bria receives. When we were younger, Bria got new clothes every season. My mother took her shopping at the mall and let her pick whatever she wanted. I wore sweaters from cousins, jeans that fit badly, and shoes that had already been worn down by someone else. Veda called it practical. She is still growing, she would say. You do not need anything new right now. I was only 2 years older than Bria. I was growing too. When Bria started struggling in school, my parents hired a tutor twice a week. They drove her across town and bought her expensive test prep books. When I struggled in chemistry, Nolan handed me an old workbook and said I needed to stop making excuses. When Bria turned 17, she got a new car. It was not extravagant, but it was reliable. It had a backup camera, clean seats, and a full warranty. When I turned 19, a family friend sold me an old sedan with rust around the wheel wells. I paid for the repairs with money from my part-time job at a grocery store. Nolan told me that learning to handle problems would make me stronger. Maybe he believed that. Or maybe he only said it because I was the daughter he expected to manage without help. I looked at Veda's message again. The dress was not really the point. Bria had always been protected from consequences. If she wanted something, the family rearranged itself around her. If she made a mistake, someone else covered the bill. If she felt disappointed, everyone was expected to rush in and make her comfortable. This time, my mother had decided I would cover the gap. I opened a reply. Mom, I spent 32 days in a hospital bed. You did not visit once. You did not call during my second procedure. Dad asked me about a lawnmower. Bria asked about her earbuds case. And now you are asking me to pay for a wedding dress. I stared at the message. My thumb hovered over send. Then I deleted it. I wrote another one. I am still paying medical bills. I am still recovering. I am not sending you $12,800. I deleted that one too. The truth was, I could have explained every part of it perfectly, and it would not have mattered. They would not read my words as pain. They would read them as resistance. They would call me dramatic. They would say I was holding a grudge. They would tell each other I was making Bria's wedding about me. I was tired of giving people long explanations when they had already decided not to understand. So I opened my banking app. The blue light from the screen reflected against the dark surface of my tea. I entered Veda's account information, which I still had saved from the time I sent her money for a plumbing repair 2 years earlier. Amount: $1. The number sat in the box with almost ridiculous calm. I added a memo. Good luck. Then I pressed send. The confirmation sound was small. One soft chime. That was all. I took a screenshot of the transaction before I could second-guess myself. Veda's name. $1. The timestamp. The memo line. Good luck. Then I set my phone face down on the table. For the first time since the hospital, the silence in my apartment did not feel like abandonment. It felt like space. I picked up my cold tea and carried it to the sink. Then I turned my phone to silent. I knew my family would notice. I knew they would not understand. And I knew, by morning, they would have plenty to say. I woke up to my phone vibrating against the wooden table beside my bed. For several seconds, I did not move. The sound kept coming in short bursts. It stopped, then started again. By the time I reached for the phone, the screen was bright with notifications. 11 missed calls from Veda. 7 texts from Nolan. 3 new messages from Bria. I sat up slowly, careful of the soreness that still pulled across my abdomen. Morning light slipped through the blinds in thin gray lines. My apartment was quiet except for the refrigerator humming in the kitchen. The phone vibrated again. Veda calling. I watched her name appear on the screen until it disappeared. Then I opened Nolan's messages. Nolan, what was that supposed to mean? Nolan, your mother is upset. Nolan, Bria is upset too. Nolan, you did not need to embarrass anyone. Nolan, call your mother. Nolan, this is not how family handles things. I read them without changing my expression. Not once did he ask whether I was feeling better. Not once did he mention the hospital. He had no concern for the 3 surgeries, the recovery appointments, or the fact that I was still moving through my own apartment like every step had a cost. They had found their voices because Bria's dress had a missing payment. That was the emergency. I opened Bria's messages next. The first one had arrived at 7:14 that morning. Bria, are you serious right now? The second one came 2 minutes later. Bria, Mom showed everyone at brunch last night, and Aunt Delphine thinks you hate me. Then the third message filled most of the screen. Bria, do you know how humiliating this is? You sent Mom $1 with good luck like you were trying to make a joke out of me. Kieran's family was there. Everyone saw it. This is supposed to be the happiest time of my life, and you made it about you. I leaned back against the headboard. Bria had not asked how I was doing in more than a month. She had not sent a message when I got out of the hospital. She had not asked whether I had a ride home. She had not asked if I could eat, sleep, or walk without help. But now she had time to write a paragraph about her embarrassment. I pictured the brunch without ever seeing it. My mother sitting at a table with her phone in her hand, showing the $1 transfer to relatives. Bria beside her, probably with one hand resting on the wedding planning folder she had been carrying everywhere lately. Nolan making the same tight expression he used when anyone questioned him. I imagined them all looking at the screen, not thinking about why I sent it, only thinking about how it looked. My thumb hovered over the reply box. I could have written, you made 32 days in a hospital about nobody. I could have written, you had time to shop for a dress while I was trying to stay alive. I could have written, I did not make your life difficult. I stopped making mine useful to you. Instead, I locked my phone. The messages stayed there anyway. They stacked one under another, just like the envelopes on my kitchen counter had stacked while I was in the hospital. Bills. Insurance notices. Advertisements. Evidence that time kept moving while I was missing from my own life. I carried my phone into the kitchen and set it on the table. It started vibrating again almost immediately. Veda calling. Then Nolan. Then Veda again. Each name on the screen felt like a knock on a door they had never bothered to open for me. I made oatmeal because it was easy to swallow. I took my medication with water. I wiped down the counter because I needed something steady to do with my hands. By lunchtime, the calls had stopped. The silence that followed was not peaceful exactly. It was watchful. I knew my family well enough to understand what they were doing. They were waiting for me to panic. They were waiting for me to apologize, explain myself, or offer a compromise. That was the role I had always played. I was the one who smoothed things over. I was the one who paid the extra bill, gave the ride, covered the gap, sent the polite message after someone hurt me. When Bria borrowed money, I was supposed to be patient. When my parents forgot something important, I was supposed to understand. They called it being mature. What they meant was that I made their lives easier. This time, I had not made anything easier. That was why they were upset. Their panic was not about the damage they had done to me. It was about the fact that I had stopped acting like a resource they could access whenever Bria wanted something. I did not respond that day. I did not respond the next day either. I went to my follow-up appointment. I filled my prescriptions. I rested when my body told me to rest. I let the messages remain unread after the first time I saw them. By the second evening, Veda had stopped calling. Nolan had stopped texting. Bria had not sent anything else. For a brief moment, I thought that might be the end of it. Then, 2 days after I sent the $1, my phone rang just after dinner. Nolan's name filled the screen. I watched it ring once, then twice. By the third ring, I picked it up. 2 weeks after my call with Nolan, I drove to Westerville to see my cousin Morel. The drive took 34 minutes from my apartment in Columbus. I knew because I checked the clock when I pulled into her driveway at 2:16 in the afternoon, then sat in my car until 2:23 before getting out. Morel had visited me twice at Starlight Medical Center. The first time, she brought chicken soup in a thermos and 3 paperback mysteries from a used bookstore near her office. The second time, she came after work with a clean pair of socks, lip balm, and a phone charger because she noticed mine was fraying near the plug. She had not made a speech about it. She had simply shown up. Her house was a small brick colonial on a quiet street lined with maples. The front porch had 2 white chairs and a ceramic pot full of mums that were beginning to turn orange at the edges. When she opened the door, she took one look at me and stepped aside. "You look stronger," she said. "I can walk through a grocery store without needing to sit down now. That is progress. It is a very slow kind of progress." Morel smiled, but she did not argue with me. That was one of the reasons I trusted her. She never tried to turn a fact into something prettier than it was. Her kitchen smelled like cinnamon and black tea. A kettle was already heating on the stove. I sat at the small round table near the window while she pulled 2 mugs from the cabinet. For the first few minutes, we talked about ordinary things. My latest follow-up appointment. Her job at the insurance office. The road construction near Interstate 270 that had turned a 20-minute commute into a daily problem. I could feel the conversation moving around the thing neither of us had named yet. Morel poured the tea and placed my mug in front of me. Steam rose between us. "I am glad you are doing better," she said. Everyone was worried. My hand stopped around the handle. "Everyone?" She looked up. "Of course. We all knew you were having a hard time." I watched one small drop of tea slide down the side of my mug. "You knew I was having a hard time?" Morel's expression changed slightly. "Not much. Just enough. Your mom told us," she said. "She said you were recovering and needed space." The kitchen seemed to get quieter. Outside, a truck moved down the street. Somewhere farther away, a lawn mower started and stopped. I set my mug down carefully. "What exactly did she tell you?" Morel blinked. "She said you did not want visitors," she answered. "She said the hospital was overwhelming you." I did not speak. Morel's fingers tightened around her own cup. "Livia," she said slowly, "your mother told us you asked for privacy. She said visitors would upset you." For a few seconds, I only looked at her. The steam from the tea kept lifting into the air between us. My hands were flat on the table. I noticed that because I had expected them to shake. They did not. "I never said that," I told her. Morel's face went pale. "I mean, I know you did not want crowds," she said quickly. "You were sick. I thought maybe you asked her to keep things quiet." "I asked my mother to send someone." The words came out even. I told her I was scared. I told her I hated waking up alone. I told her that the chair beside my bed stayed empty every day. Morel did not interrupt. "I never asked for privacy," I continued. "I never told anyone not to visit. I did not tell my mother visitors would upset me. I asked her to come. I asked if she could tell someone else to come if she could not." The silence after that was long enough that I could hear the kettle ticking as it cooled. Morel looked down at the table. "I did not know," she said. "I know you did not. That mattered to me." Morel had come twice. She had signed in at the front desk both times. Her name would be in the visitor log. She had carried soup into my hospital room and sat in the chair that no one in my immediate family had touched. She had believed my mother because that was what family members do when someone presents a clean, reasonable version of events. I wanted to be fair to her. Veda had not said, "I am abandoning my daughter." She had made the lie sound gentle. She had made it sound like care. Morel reached for her phone, then stopped. "There was a group chat," she said. I looked at her. "The extended family chat," she continued. Your mom posted updates in there. Not detailed ones, but she told people you were stable. She said you needed rest. She said not to pressure you. I had been removed from that group 3 Christmases earlier. The argument had started over a holiday dinner. Bria had changed the plans without telling me, then acted surprised when I arrived after everyone had already eaten. Veda said I was making a scene. Nolan said I needed to stop taking things personally. By midnight, I was no longer in the family group chat. At the time, it had seemed petty. Now, sitting across from Morel, I understood how useful that removal had been. No one had to ask me whether the messages were true. No one could see whether I had responded. No one had to explain why I was alone. My mother had controlled the story because I was not there to correct it. She told everyone I did not want visitors? I asked. Morel nodded once. She said you wanted to be left alone, she said. She said you were exhausted and did not want anyone seeing you while you recovered. I thought about every text I had sent Veda from my hospital bed. I am scared. Can you come tomorrow? I hate being alone here. I thought about her replies. Rest up, sweetheart. Keep me updated. Hope you feel better. The abandonment changed shape in that kitchen. Until then, I had believed my family had simply chosen not to come. That was painful enough. But this was different. My mother had built a version of me that made their absence acceptable. She had turned my empty chair into a preference. She had made sure no one would look too closely at why her daughter had spent 32 days in a hospital room without family beside her. Morel picked up her phone. If you want, she said, I can show you the messages. I looked at the screen in her hand. Then I lifted my tea and took one slow sip. Yes, I said. Show me everything. Morel unlocked her phone with her thumb and placed it between us on the kitchen table. For a moment, neither of us touched it. The tea had cooled enough that the steam was gone. Outside the window, a school bus groaned to a stop at the corner. Its brakes made a long, tired sound before it moved on. Morel opened the family group chat. The name at the top read Heart Family Updates. I had not seen that title in 3 years. I remembered the night I was removed from it. Christmas dinner had started at 5. Bria changed the time in a separate message thread and never included me. By the time I got to my parents' house at 6, dessert plates were already on the counter. When I asked why nobody had told me, Veda said I was making a scene. Nolan said I needed to stop taking everything personally. Then, before midnight, I was gone from the group. At the time, I told myself it did not matter. Sitting in Morel's kitchen, I understood it had mattered more than I knew. Morel turned the phone toward me. There are messages from every week you were in the hospital, she said. I am sorry, Livia. I picked up the phone. The screen was warm from her hand. The first message from Veda was dated the afternoon I had collapsed. Veda, Livia had a health issue this morning, but she is being taken care of. Please do not worry anyone. Aunt Delphine had replied 3 minutes later. Aunt Delphine, should someone go to the hospital? Veda, no need. Livia is resting and she wants space right now. I read that sentence twice. Then I scrolled. 2 days later, while I was still barely able to sit up after the first surgery, Veda had posted another update. Veda, she is recovering. The doctors are monitoring her closely, but she does not want visitors. No need to overwhelm her. There were heart reactions under the message. There were replies from relatives saying they hoped I felt better. There were no questions asking why I had suddenly decided that nobody should see me. There were no calls to the hospital. Veda had answered the question before anyone could ask it. I kept scrolling. On day 6, there was a message from Uncle Soren. Uncle Soren, I can stop by after work tomorrow. I do not want her to be alone. Veda, that is thoughtful, but she would rather be left alone. She gets tired easily, and she is very private about medical things. I felt the phone press harder into my palm. I had sent Veda a message the night before that one. I am scared to fall asleep here. Can you come tomorrow even for 20 minutes? Her reply had come at 11:48 p.m. Try to rest, sweetheart. You need to focus on healing. The group chat showed what she had written to everyone else less than 12 hours later. She would rather be left alone. The wording was clean. Reasonable. Almost protective. That was the part that made it work. Morel watched me from across the table, but she did not rush to fill the silence. I appreciated that. People often think the kind thing is to explain pain away as quickly as possible. Morel understood that some facts had to sit in the room before anyone tried to make them easier to hold. I scrolled to the second week. That was when my fever had spiked. I remembered the cool cloth on my forehead. I remembered the resident coming in at 4:20 in the morning and ordering more blood work. I remembered the surgeon saying there might be another procedure if my numbers did not improve. The messages in the group chat that week did not mention any of it. Veda, Bria had her first dress appointment today. She looks beautiful in everything. Aunt Delphine, that is wonderful. How is Livia doing? Veda, stable. She wants peace and quiet. We are trying to respect that. Then, 40 minutes later, Veda, I am tied up with wedding details this week. Flowers, dress appointments, all of it. Bria has so much on her plate. My eyes moved across the messages slowly. The dates were there. Monday, 9:13 a.m. Wednesday, 6:47 p.m. Friday, 2:05 p.m. I knew where I had been on those days. Monday was the morning I could not keep water down. Wednesday was the day Anika brought me tea and pudding because I had not touched my dinner. Friday was the afternoon I had asked Veda whether she could tell someone in the family I was lonely. She had never answered that message. Instead, she had updated the group chat. She wants peace and quiet. I handed the phone back to Morel. My fingers were still. She did not just stay away, I said. She made sure everyone else stayed away too. Morel looked down at the screen. I thought she was protecting you, she said. I know. And I did know. That was the part one could be fair about. My relatives had been given a version of events that sounded believable. They had been told I was stable, private, tired, and unwilling to see anyone. Most people do not challenge a mother speaking about her daughter in a hospital. Veda had used that. She had turned my silence into consent. She had turned my empty chair into a choice. Morel offered to send me screenshots. I watched as she selected the messages one by one. The first set had 4 images. Then 5. Then 3 more. By the time she was finished, there were 14 screenshots in our text thread. 6 were direct messages from Veda telling relatives that I wanted privacy or did not want visitors. The rest showed the wedding planning updates placed between those statements like my hospital stay was only background noise. Morel sent them all. My phone vibrated against the table. 14 new images. I did not open them again until I was back in my car. The late afternoon sun came through the windshield and landed across the passenger seat. My discharge folder was sitting there, still inside the same hard blue cover Starlight Medical Center had given me. 32 days. 3 surgeries. A printed follow-up schedule. I put the screenshots beside it. Then I started the car but did not pull away. For 19 minutes, I sat parked in front of Morel's house. I watched a woman walk a small dog across the street. I watched a delivery van pull into the next driveway. I watched sunlight move 1 inch at a time across the blue folder beside me. Until that afternoon, I had believed my family stayed away because I did not matter enough. That was painful, but it had a simple shape. This did not. My mother had managed the information. She had made sure nobody arrived with questions. Nobody came close enough to see the empty chair. Nobody saw how often I checked the door. She had protected the image of a family that cared. I leaned back against the driver's seat and looked at the screenshots one more time. The dollar had been an answer. It was not enough anymore. Not because I wanted to punish Bria. Not because I wanted to destroy a wedding. I did not need them to love me anymore. But I would not let them turn their abandonment into my fault. I placed the phone in the cup holder, shifted the car into reverse, and backed out of Morel's driveway. For the first time, I knew exactly what I was going to do next. The next morning, I did not call Veda. I did not call Nolan. I did not send Bria a message explaining what I had learned. I had spent too many years giving my family private chances to do the right thing. Every time, the result had been the same. They listened long enough to find the weak part of my explanation, then used it to turn the conversation back on me. This time, I was not going to give them a conversation. I was going to give them a record. I woke up at 6:40 that Thursday morning, before my alarm. My apartment was still dark except for the streetlight leaking through the blinds. I made coffee, then stood by the kitchen counter while it brewed. The smell filled the room slowly. I pulled the blue discharge folder from the drawer where I had put it after returning from Morel's house. The cover was bent at the corners from being carried between the hospital, my apartment, and her kitchen. Inside were 3 pages that mattered. The first page showed my admission date. The second listed the dates of my surgeries and the complication that required the additional procedure. The third showed my discharge date, 32 days after I had arrived. I laid them on the table beside my phone. Then I opened the screenshots Morel had sent. 14 images. 6 messages from Veda telling relatives I wanted privacy, that I was too tired for visitors, and that nobody should overwhelm me. 8 more messages showed wedding planning threaded around those updates. Dress appointments. Flower samples. A venue deposit. BRIA'S excitement over a reception menu. The dates sat there in plain view. Each one cross-referenced with a day I had spent in a hospital bed. I did not need to add commentary. The timeline did that for me. At 9:15, I drove to a printing shop 2 blocks from my apartment. It was a narrow place between a dry cleaner and a tax office, with a faded blue sign in the window that said copy, print, ship. A man behind the counter took the pages from me. Single-sided or double-sided, he asked. Single-sided, I said. 3 copies of each. He nodded and fed the papers into the machine. The copier started with a mechanical whir. Warm pages slid into the tray one by one. I watched my name appear on the top line of each sheet. Livia Hart. Admission date. Surgical history. Discharge date. The evidence was not dramatic. It was not emotional. It did not need to be. That was why I trusted it. I paid for the copies, placed one set inside a manila envelope, and carried the other 2 sets back to my car. The paper was still warm through the envelope. For most of the drive home, I kept both hands on the steering wheel. At a red light near High Street, I remembered what Veda had said to everyone. She wants space. I had wanted someone to sit in an empty chair. The difference between those 2 things was the whole story. Back at my apartment, I put the printed records on the kitchen table. Then I opened the family group chat app. Morel had sent me a message 10 minutes earlier. Morel, I am ready when you are. I looked at it for a moment, then typed back. Livia, add me for 5 minutes. That is all I need. Her reply came immediately. Morel, done. The group appeared on my screen. Hart Family Updates. 37 members. I recognized the names. Aunts who had sent birthday cards. Uncles who had hugged me at graduation. Cousins I had not seen in years. People who had been told I did not want them near me. My thumb rested above the attachment icon. Before I touched it, I poured a cup of tea. That was the only thing I did to slow myself down. I carried the cup back to the table, sat in the same chair where I had read Veda's demand for $12,800, and attached the 3 discharge pages. Then I attached 14 screenshots. 17 images in total. The chat showed them loading in a row. I watched the small circles fill, one after another. Then I wrote one message. For anyone who was told I did not want visitors, that was never true. I asked for support every day. I just did not receive it. I paused before adding the last 2 sentences. The wedding has continued to be discussed as a family expense. Before anyone contributes money, time, or support, I think you deserve to know what happened during my 32 days at Starlight Medical Center. I read it once. There were no insults. No accusations that could be dismissed as anger. No demand for anyone to choose a side. Only the dates, the messages, and the facts. I pressed send. The sound was small. One brief click. For 2 seconds, nothing happened. Then the typing indicator appeared. 1 person. Then 3. Then 5. I did not wait to see who they were. I left the group chat immediately. The screen changed back to my message list, and the Hart Family Updates thread disappeared. My phone began vibrating before I could set it down. Veda. I watched her name flash. Then Nolan. Then Bria. I did not answer any of them. Instead, I carried my tea to the kitchen window and looked down at the parking lot. A woman in a red coat was loading groceries into the trunk of a silver car. A child in the back seat pressed both hands to the window. Normal life continued. My phone kept vibrating on the table behind me. I opened the settings menu. I turned off the sound. Then I powered the phone down completely. The apartment settled into a silence that I had chosen. For the first time since the ambulance ride, I was not trying to convince anyone that I deserved care. I had protected the truth. The rest was no longer mine to manage. I kept my phone off until the next morning. Not because I was afraid of what they would say. I had already read the only version of the story that mattered. It was saved in 14 screenshots, dated across 32 days, and placed beside 3 pages from Starlight Medical Center. The facts had left my apartment. They were no longer trapped between my hospital bed and the empty chair beside it. At 8:07 the next morning, I turned my phone back on. It vibrated so hard against the kitchen counter that it moved half an inch. There were 18 missed calls. 6 were from Veda. 4 were from Nolan. 3 were from Bria. The others came from numbers I recognized but had not heard from in months. Aunt Delphine. Uncle Soren. My Aunt Marla. A cousin I had not seen since my college graduation. I did not open the voicemails. I did not return any calls. Instead, I made oatmeal, took my medication, and opened the blinds. The sky over Columbus was clear for the first time in days. Sunlight hit the counter where my discharge papers had been sitting overnight. I put them back in the blue folder and slid it into the drawer beneath the coffee maker. Then Morel called. I let it ring twice before answering. Are you okay? She asked. I am fine, I said. What happened? For a second, I heard voices in the background. Then a door closed and the sound softened. My phone has not stopped ringing, Morel said. Aunt Delphine called Veda before 7 this morning. I leaned against the counter. What did she say? She asked why Veda told everyone you did not want visitors. I waited. Morel took a breath. Your mother said you were on medication. She said you might have misunderstood what was said during recovery. She said you were exhausted and probably interpreted things too strongly. I looked at the cabinet door in front of me. The wood grain formed a thin dark line that ran from the handle to the hinge. I followed it with my eyes while Morel spoke. That is interesting, I said. She also said she never told people not to visit. She said she only told them you needed rest. And the screenshots? I sent them again in the chat, Morel said. The 6 messages where she said you wanted privacy. The one where she said visitors would upset you. The one where she told Uncle Soren you would rather be left alone. I did not say anything. I could picture Veda reading those words in real time. I could picture her looking for a way to separate them from the truth they carried. Morel continued. I told them the discharge paperwork has dates. The surgical schedule has dates. The messages have dates. Medical paperwork does not get confused because somebody wants it to. The sentence landed cleanly. No raised voice. No dramatic accusation. Just a fact that could not be bent. What did Nolan say? I asked. There was a brief silence. He said Veda was trying to protect everyone from worry. I closed my eyes. That sounded like him. Nolan had spent years taking Veda's choices and placing softer words around them. He did not deny what happened. He changed the label until it looked less ugly. Protecting everyone from worry. As if the problem had been the family's discomfort, not my isolation. As if I had been a difficult piece of information that needed to be managed. And Bria? I asked. She is upset, Morel said carefully. Some relatives have told her they are not contributing to the dress anymore. Aunt Delphine withdrew the $2,000 she offered. Uncle Soren canceled the $1,200 check for the florist. Your Aunt Marla said she will not pay toward the reception hall until Veda explains herself. I rested my hand on the drawer where the blue folder sat. For the first time, I could see the consequence moving through the family in real numbers. $2,000. $1,200. A reception payment paused. The wedding dress had been the center of their emergency until the story behind it became visible. Bria called me, Morel added. She said you are trying to ruin her wedding. I looked out the window. A man across the parking lot was rinsing his car with a garden hose. Water ran down the pavement in narrow silver lines. I did not mention her wedding, I said. I know. I posted the hospital dates and what Mom told people. That is all. I know, Morel repeated. That was enough. I did not need everyone to agree with me. I did not need them to make me the hero of the story. I only needed the record to remain where no one could quietly erase it. For years, I had been taught that silence kept the peace. Be the bigger person. Do not upset your mother. Let Bria have her moment. Do not make things awkward. But the peace they wanted was always built on one condition. I had to carry the truth alone. When I stopped doing that, the peace disappeared. That was not my responsibility. Morel told me Veda had started calling relatives one by one. Nolan had sent messages asking everyone to stop discussing private family matters. Bria had posted something vague online about people being jealous of happy milestones. None of it changed the dates. None of it changed the empty chair. None of it changed the fact that Veda had made sure the extended family stayed away while she spent those same weeks discussing flowers, dresses, and menu options. I am going to keep the screenshots, Morel said. In case anyone tries to say they were edited. Save the full thread too, I said. With the dates and names visible. I already did. That was why Morel mattered. She did not just feel bad for me. She understood what her record was worth. After we hung up, I turned my phone face down on the counter. It started vibrating again almost immediately. Veda. Then Nolan. Then Bria. I let every call go unanswered. Outside, the water from the neighbor's hose reached the storm drain and disappeared without a sound. For once, the truth was doing its own work. I did not need to chase it. Morel called me 3 days after the family group chat exploded. I was at my kitchen table, sorting my follow-up prescriptions into a weekly organizer. The plastic compartments clicked shut one by one. Monday morning. Monday evening. Tuesday morning. My phone lit up beside the pill organizer. Morel, I said. You have a minute? I do. She exhaled slowly. Things are changing. I leaned back in my chair and waited. Aunt Delphine formally withdrew the $2,000 she offered for Bria's dress, Morel said. Uncle Soren canceled his $1,200 for the florist. Aunt Marla told Veda she is no longer covering the extra reception package. The numbers settled on the table between us, even though Morel was 34 minutes away. 2,000. 1,200. A reception package. The money had always been there for Bria. That was the arrangement my family understood best. Someone offered. Someone else covered the shortfall. Bria got what she wanted without needing to ask where the money came from. This time, the money had followed the truth out the door. Has Bria said anything? I asked. She has called you 6 times since yesterday morning. I looked at my phone. There were 4 new missed calls from Bria. 2 from an hour earlier. 1 from 20 minutes before Morel called. I have not listened to the voicemails, I said. You may want to, Morel replied. Her tone changed. That afternoon, I sat by the window with my phone in one hand and a cup of tea in the other. Rain tapped softly against the glass. I opened the voicemail list. The first message from Bria was only 26 seconds long. Livia, please call me back. This has gone too far. The second was longer. Veda keeps saying people will calm down, but nobody is calming down. The boutique called. They need the balance by Friday, or I have to pick another dress. Can you please just talk to everyone? I listened without moving. Her third voicemail arrived at 8:42 that night. You know I have been planning this since Kieran proposed. You know how much this dress means to me. I do not understand why you could not wait until after the wedding. Not once did she say hospital. Not once did she say 32 days. Not once did she say she was sorry. The wedding dress had become her version of the emergency. I set the phone down and finished my tea. Morel kept me updated because she understood I did not want direct contact. She never pushed me to answer calls or return messages. She simply told me what had happened after the facts entered the room. Veda had called Aunt Delphine twice. According to Morel, she kept using the same phrase. This should not ruin Bria's wedding over a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding. That was what my mother had reduced it to, not the group chat messages. Not the weeks of silence. Not the dates on the discharge paperwork. Not the empty chair beside my hospital bed. A misunderstanding. Veda spoke as if the problem was not what she had done. The problem was that other people had seen it. Nolan took a softer approach. He called relatives and said the family was under pressure. He said Veda had been overwhelmed with wedding planning and had not handled communication perfectly. That phrase sounded familiar too. Not handled communication perfectly. He could turn a locked door into a scheduling error if he needed to. But the relatives had the screenshots now. They had the medical dates. They had Veda's own messages saying I wanted to be left alone. There was no version of overwhelmed that changed the record. 2 days later, Morel called again. She went back to the boutique, she said. Bria? Yes. Veda and Kieran were with her. Morel had heard the details from Aunt Delphine, who had been called by Veda afterward. The bridal shop had sent Bria a payment notice that morning. The remaining balance was $12,800. Her original deposit had secured the dress for 30 days. The boutique would either need full payment by Friday afternoon or Bria would have to choose a gown from the lower price collection. She thought your parents would cover it, Morel said. They thought I would cover it, I replied. There was a pause. Yes, Morel said. They did. The fitting room was bright white, according to what Morel had heard. Bria stood under recessed lights in a dress she had been showing everyone in photos for weeks. Veda argued with the sales manager about extending the deadline. The manager offered a payment plan, but it required a larger down payment than they could make. Kieran stood near the mirror and said very little. Then he asked Veda why so many relatives had suddenly stopped helping. Veda told him there had been a family disagreement. Kieran asked what kind. Bria tried to say it was complicated. That was when he looked at the group chat screenshots on her phone. Morel did not know exactly what he said afterward. She only knew he left the boutique before Bria did. By the end of the day, Bria had selected another dress. It was still beautiful, I was told. It was ivory, fitted through the waist, and much simpler than the first one. The lace train was shorter. The beading was gone. The price was less than half of what the original gown had cost. They also cut the live string quartet from the reception. The floral order was reduced. The guest list lost 40 names. None of that happened because I wanted to punish Bria. I did not. I sat across from Morel at a small cafe 2 days later and told her exactly that. She stirred sugar into her coffee while I wrapped both hands around mine. I did not want to ruin her wedding, I said. I know. Their wedding budget is not my responsibility. Their lie was never mine to carry. Morel looked at me for a moment. Then she nodded. The truth had cost them money because money was the language they had used to measure what mattered. They had asked me for $12,800 without asking whether I had eaten that day, slept that night, or made it through recovery alone. When the people around them saw the full story, they stopped funding the version Veda had built. That was not revenge. That was consequence. And for the first time, I did not feel responsible for making it easier for them. Veda left her voicemail on a Tuesday at 3:18 in the afternoon. I was sitting in my car in the parking lot outside a grocery store on Olentangy River Road. I had gone in for yogurt, soup, and a few things that did not require much preparation. The grocery bag sat on the passenger seat, damp at the bottom from a container of ice. My phone lit up with Veda's name. I watched it ring until it stopped. Then the voicemail notification appeared. 2 minutes and 18 seconds. I did not listen to it right away. I put the grocery bag on the floor behind the passenger seat. I adjusted the air vent. I checked the rearview mirror even though there was nothing there except the parking lot, a row of carts, and a man loading bottled water into the back of a truck. Then I pressed play. My mother's voice came through the speaker, slightly distorted. Livia, this has gotten out of hand. Your father and I need to sit down with you and talk face to face. The family is upset, Bria is under a lot of stress, and this whole situation has made the wedding so difficult. I kept my eyes on the windshield. She continued. I never wanted anyone to feel excluded. You know that. I was trying to respect your recovery and keep everyone from overwhelming you. But now people are pulling away from Bria and Kieran's family is asking questions. This is affecting our family's reputation. There it was. Not the hospital. Not the surgeries. Not the chair beside my bed. Our family's reputation. Veda spent 2 minutes and 18 seconds talking about what had happened to the wedding, what the relatives were saying, and how difficult it was for Bria to face Karen's family. She did not say, "I am sorry I left you alone." She did not say, "I am sorry I told people you did not want visitors." She did not say, "I should have come." When the voicemail ended, I did not delete it. I saved it. Then I started the car and drove home. By the time I reached my apartment, Nolan had sent a text. "Nolan, I hope you can move past this and let the family heal." I read the message while standing at my kitchen counter. The word heal sat there like it belonged to them. He wanted the family to heal from the discomfort of being confronted. He wanted everyone to return to the version of peace where nobody had to look too carefully at what Veda had done. I placed the phone down and unpacked the groceries. Soup in the cabinet. Yogurt in the refrigerator. Tea on the counter. I moved slowly because my body still required that from me. The stitches had healed, but recovery had its own schedule. I had learned not to punish myself for needing a chair after carrying groceries or for stopping halfway through cleaning the kitchen. My phone vibrated again. This time, it was Bria. Her message was longer than either of my parents' attempts. "Bria, I did not know Mom told everyone not to visit. I am serious. I thought people just could not come because they were busy. But you still picked the worst possible time to expose this. You know how much the wedding means to me. You knew people were helping with the dress and the venue, and now everyone is judging me for something I did not do. I am sorry you felt alone, but this did not have to become public." I read the message twice. Then I placed my phone beside the blue discharge folder. Bria might not have written the group chat messages. She might not have told Uncle Soren to stay away. She might not have decided to hide the seriousness of my condition. But she had lived comfortably inside the system Veda built. She had accepted the money, the dress appointments, the florist deposit, the attention that kept flowing toward her while I lay alone under fluorescent lights. She had sent me a message about her earbuds case on day 18. She had not sent one message asking whether I was okay. Her apology was built around the same idea as Veda's. "I am sorry you felt alone." Not, "I am sorry we left you alone." There is a difference. One sentence treats pain like an unfortunate reaction. The other admits someone caused it. I sat at the kitchen table and opened a new message thread with all 3 names selected. Veda. Nolan. Bria. For several minutes, I did nothing. I drank half a cup of tea. I folded the grocery receipt into quarters. I listened to the refrigerator motorcycle off. Then I wrote, "I do not want a meeting. I do not want a debate about what happened, and I will not participate in conversations that focus on the wedding, family reputation, or what this has cost anyone else." I stopped and read it. Then I added, "I spent 32 days in Starlight Medical Center. I had 3 surgeries. I asked for support, and I was told people were too busy while others were told I did not want visitors. You're asking me to move past something you still refuse to look at." My hands stayed still over the phone. There was one final paragraph. "I will not accept apologies that ask me to make this easier for you. Do not contact me again unless you are prepared to acknowledge what happened without changing the subject to your own losses." I sent the message at 6:42 that evening. The typing indicator appeared under Veda's name almost immediately. Then Nolan's. Then Bria's. I did not wait for any of them. I opened Veda's contact card first. The red option appeared near the bottom of the screen. "Block this caller." I pressed it. The button changed color. Then I opened Nolan's contact card and did the same. Finally, I opened Bria's. For a moment, I looked at her name and the old message thread below it. Going into surgery. Seen. Her question about the earbuds case. Her message about the dress. Then I pressed block. The screen went quiet. My breathing stayed even. There are apologies that are not apologies at all. They are requests for the injured person to smooth the room, lower their voice, and make everyone else comfortable again. I had done that for years. That night, I chose not to do it one more time. 3 months after I blocked my family, my surgeon signed the last page of my recovery plan. The appointment was at 10:30 on a Thursday morning. I sat on the paper-covered exam table while he reviewed my chart on a tablet. The room smelled faintly of disinfectant and hand soap. Outside the door, someone rolled a supply cart down the hallway. "Your recovery is stable," he said. "Your blood work looks good. You can return to work part-time next week, as long as you keep listening to your body." I looked at the printed schedule he handed me. One follow-up in 6 weeks. Then another in 3 months. No new procedures. No warning about emergency signs. No sentence that made the room suddenly colder. I folded the paper once and put it in my bag. Morel had come with me. She was sitting in the waiting room when I walked out, wearing a soft gray coat and holding 2 coffees. Mine had oat milk because she remembered regular milk had bothered my stomach during recovery. "You look like someone gave you decent news," she said. They did. She handed me the coffee without asking for details first. That was how Morel moved through the world. She noticed what people needed, then gave them room to decide how much they wanted to say about it. Over those 3 months, she had kept showing up in quiet ways. She brought groceries after my first long shift back at work. She texted every Sunday evening to ask whether I had taken my medication and whether I needed anything from the store. She sat with me during one follow-up appointment and never mentioned Veda, Nolan, or Bria unless I did. Her care did not come with a bill. It did not come with a condition. It did not require me to perform gratitude every 5 minutes. By April, I was working 3 days a week again. My office was in a small marketing firm near German Village, above a bookstore and across the street from a coffee shop with red awnings. I had worked there before the hospital, mostly handling client accounts and campaign calendars. Coming back felt strange at first. My desk was still where I left it. My mug was still in the cabinet. The emails had kept arriving even while my life had stopped. On my second week back, I started going downstairs for coffee around 2 in the afternoon. That was where I met Arden Cole. He was usually sitting near the front window with a laptop open and a black notebook beside his drink. He worked in building design, although I did not learn that until later. At first, he was simply the man who held the door open when my hands were full. The third time it happened, I said, "You are making me look incapable." He smiled. "I am trying to keep you from dropping your coffee. I have a good record with coffee." That is what everyone says before an incident. His voice was easy. He did not ask why I moved slowly. He did not ask about the faint scar visible above the collar of my shirt. He did not lean closer when I mentioned that I had been out of work for medical reasons. He just talked to me like I was there. That mattered more than I expected. We started having coffee once a week. Then dinner after work. Then walks through German Village when the weather warmed up enough to sit outside without a coat. Arden knew I had spent time in the hospital. I told him that much after our 4th date. He nodded, listened, and did not ask for the full story. "You can tell me whenever you want," he said. "Or you can never tell me. Either one is fine." No one in my family had ever offered me that kind of choice. A month later, I woke up with a regular cold. Nothing serious. A sore throat, a fever, and the kind of tiredness that makes even pouring water feel unnecessary. Still, the first time I looked at my thermometer, I felt the old hospital memory move through my body. Not panic exactly. More like a door opening somewhere I thought I had locked. I texted Arden that I was staying home. He replied almost immediately. "Arden, do you have soup?" "Livia, I have crackers and tea. I will survive." "Arden, that is not an answer." 45 minutes later, he knocked on my apartment door. Rain had soaked the shoulders of his jacket. His hair was darker from the weather, and he carried a paper bag in one hand and a small pharmacy bag in the other. "I brought chicken soup, ginger tea, cough drops, and those electrolyte packets you hate," he said. "I do not hate them. You made that face when you drank one last time. I had a strong opinion. You are allowed to have one." He stepped inside, set the bags on my counter, and started unpacking them as though it was the most normal thing in the world. The apartment filled with the smell of hot soup. Rain tapped against the windows. Arden hung his wet jacket over the back of a chair and checked the expiration date on the medicine before placing it beside my mug. I stood there watching him. During 32 days in a hospital bed, I had learned how much absence could weigh. That afternoon, I learned the opposite. Presence was not always dramatic. It was a man driving through rain with soup. It was a cousin remembering oat milk. It was a nurse bringing pudding and tea after noticing an empty chair. Arden looked over at me. "You do not have to earn care from people who actually care about you," he said. I looked down at the soup container, warming my hands. For years, I had thought family was where you were born. Now I understood that family was where people left footprints when you needed them. I started calling Morel, Anika, and Arden the people who showed up. Not because they had fixed my past. Because they had made the future feel different. 6 months after I sent my final message, I sat on a bench beside the Scioto River with my coat zipped to my chin. The wind moved across the water in sharp little bursts. It carried the smell of wet leaves and cold stone from the walking path behind me. A runner passed with headphones in, and somewhere farther down the trail, a dog barked twice before its owner called it back. I had a paper cup of coffee between my hands. It had gone lukewarm 10 minutes earlier. I still drank it. That was the thing about peace. It did not always arrive with a perfect morning or a clean ending. Sometimes it was just sitting somewhere quiet, with nowhere you needed to be and nobody demanding something from you. I thought about the chair beside my hospital bed. I still remembered it clearly. Gray vinyl. Metal legs. Positioned near the window where the afternoon light came in too bright. It had been close enough for someone to reach over and take my hand. For 32 days, nobody did. I used to replay that image like it was a question I had failed to answer. I would picture the chair, then wonder what I could have done differently. Maybe I should have called more. Maybe I should have explained how serious things were. Maybe I should have asked more directly. That was what abandonment does when it comes from family. It makes you audit your own behavior before you question theirs. Months later, I understood the chair differently. It was never empty because I failed to ask. I had asked. I called Veda from the ambulance. I told Nolan I was going into emergency surgery. I sent Bria a message before they wheeled me toward the operating room. I asked my mother to come. I asked if she could send someone else. I said I was scared. The chair stayed empty because they chose not to fill it. Then Veda made sure nobody else would. The 14 screenshots were still saved in a folder on my phone. I did not look at them often, but I kept them. The 3 pages from Starlight Medical Center stayed in the bottom drawer beneath my coffee maker, inside the hard blue discharge folder. Admission date. 3 surgeries. Discharge date. My final message to Veda, Nolan, and Bria was saved there too. I had printed it one evening and folded it behind the discharge paperwork. I do not want a meeting. I do not want a debate. Do not contact me again unless you are prepared to acknowledge what happened without changing the subject to your own losses. No one ever sent the kind of response that would have made me reconsider those words. There was no honest apology. There was no moment where Veda said she had lied because she did not want relatives asking why she was not at the hospital. Nolan never admitted that calling it protection was just another way of avoiding responsibility. Bria never asked me what 32 days alone had been like. Morel heard things through the family after that. Veda told people she missed me. Nolan said he did not understand why I was still upset. Bria went through with the wedding in October, wearing the simpler dress she had chosen after the boutique deadline passed. The string quartet was gone. The guest list was smaller. The floral arrangements were reduced to candles and small white bouquets. Those were facts. They were not my punishment. I never wanted to ruin Bria's wedding. I did not want to stand in the middle of a room and watch anyone lose something. I only refused to keep paying for the story that had been built around me. The $1 was never about being clever. It was the first boundary I had ever set without immediately trying to soften it. For most of my life, I had believed that saying no required a defense. I thought I needed a complete explanation, evidence, and permission from the people who would be disappointed. That dollar taught me something else. A boundary does not become cruel because the person crossing it does not like the answer. I watched a group of teenagers walk past the river with paper cups and backpacks. They were laughing loudly, completely unconcerned with who might be watching. Their footsteps faded down the path. The silence around me was different from the silence in the hospital. Back then, silence had been forced on me. It sat in the empty chair and in the unanswered texts. It followed me home to a dead plant, unopened mail, and an empty refrigerator. Now, silence was mine. It was in the space between a notification and my decision not to open it. It was in the blocked numbers on my phone. It was in the fact that I no longer waited for an apology that would only make them feel better. Morel still texted every Sunday evening. Arden still left his shoes by my front door whenever he came over, even though I told him he did not have to. Anika sent me a card after I finished my last follow-up appointment. It had a picture of yellow flowers on the front and a short note inside. Keep taking care of yourself. You did the hard part. I kept that card on my refrigerator. Those were the people who showed up. Blood made us related. Showing up would have made us family. I finished my coffee and stood from the bench. My knees were stronger now. My breath did not catch when I climbed the small incline toward the parking lot. Before I reached my car, I looked back at the river once. That empty chair used to remind me that I had been left behind. Now it reminded me that I survived, that I saw the truth, and that I stopped leaving myself behind to keep other people comfortable. So tell me this. Was $1 and good luck too harsh for a family that could not spare 1 hour in 32 days? Or was it simply the first honest answer they had ever received?